Welcome. Yes, you who are finding the stream, yay. I know that Ramona's already there. Woot, woot. If you're there, make sure that you say something in the comments. We've already at least started some things going, and this is your way that you can applaud. So then you can do the emojis or hands up in the air and that kind of thing. So we are excited here. We have Kira Larkin. And so Kira Larkin, she is not only a storyteller, and she's not doing it tonight, but she also is a balloon artist. Many times she actually has gone many places. And when we were actually at the Utah Arts Festival, there was just a clamoring for the stories she would share as she would do that. But that's for another time. We'll have to have a time where it's all just that. But also, we have this is our 82nd house concert, which is pretty crazy to think about that. So what we're going to do is very much have great appreciation for all of our funders. Yes, well, hold on. We have lots of funding that we get from Utah Humanities, so we're very grateful to them. We are grateful to the Zoo Arts and Parks of Salt Lake County. And actually, in November, if you happen to be in Utah, very much vote yes for ZAP, because they do help not just Story Crossroads, but so many. So this is your chance. Once every 10 years, you get a chance to do that. And then we also appreciate so many more. We appreciate the Utah Division of Arts and Museums. We appreciate the Salt Lake City Arts Council, the City of Murray, Western States Arts Federation. So all of that is amazing. So let us remind you too that if you're online, you can scan the QR code, or you'll notice there it says storycrossroads.org/donate. That is your chance to do it. So let's do a round of applause to Kira Larkin. Woo! Yeah.
Thank you all. So the stories I am going to tell tonight feature female heroines or I should say female heroes, also known as heroines, who help others. And the first story I'm going to tell, I came up with when I was visiting my friend Holly Robison in Oregon, and we were driving to a storytelling meeting, and we drove past a meadow, and so that's where this story came from. And before I start, I'd like to thank those who are here and those who are online listening to my stories. I hope you enjoy them. "We're here," said my father as he pulled the car to a stop. I looked out the window and saw nothing, just a blank campsite. There was ground with trees around it. There was a square pit in the ground with a grate over top of it. And there was a picnic table, but that was it. "Where's the swimming pool?" said my 12-year-old sister. "And where's the trails that we can ride horses and bikes on?" asked my 15-year-old brother. "Well, there's a lake," said my mom. "You can go swimming there." "Ew, with all those slimy things swimming around and the bottom, yuck," said my 12-year-old sister. "And what about hiking?" my brother asked again. "Well, there's trails," said my father, "but there's no horses or bikes, and we didn't bring our own bikes, so we'll have to walk." Grumbling under their breath, my siblings got out of the car, and I followed. I was the youngest and was labeled a dreamer by my sister and a doofus by my brother. And being the youngest, I wasn't expected to do much as we set up camp, but, well, there was some that I did. And before it got too dark, my mom led my sister and me to the bathrooms. My father took my brother. And as we walked along the trail, my mom said, "This is the meadow that the ranger told us to not go into. You're not supposed to bother any of the wildlife." I looked out across the meadow and saw butterflies around the flowers, and I saw a rabbit And peeking out of the trees on the other side, I thought I saw a deer. "Can't we even go in to pick flowers?" I asked. "No," said my mom. "You're not supposed to touch anything in the meadow." Well, that's great, I thought. That night, I woke up having to go to the bathroom. My mom had told me to wake either her or my sister. And I thought about it, but then I thought, I'm 8. I can do it myself. I'll find the way, and I'll be 9 in just a couple of weeks, so I can do it myself. I stepped out of the tent and slipped my water shoes on and looked up, and there was a great big full moon which lighted everything around us, around the campsite. Well, I made my way to the bathroom, and on my way back, standing on the path, I thought I saw a baby deer. As I got closer, I saw that it stepped off into a fog that was where the meadow was. And forgetting what I'd been told, I stepped off as well, and I followed what I thought was that baby deer. Suddenly, I came out of the fog and found myself not in the meadow, but in the courtyard of a large castle. And I saw that it was not a baby deer, but a baby unicorn. "Oh, wow," I thought. "A baby unicorn." I started to follow it until some gruff voices stopped me. "Hey, you, stop! Don't move another inch." And suddenly found myself surrounded by men? Trolls? I looked at them. They had big pointed ears, tufts of hair growing out of their faces and their chins, and large knobby hands. "We don't allow humans here. What are you doing here?" And suddenly a kind female voice said, "She is here as my guest. Let her go." "Your guest, but I don't..." Fingers touched my lips. "Quiet, silly. From your lips to the troll's ears." I didn't say anything else. "She's your guest?" "Well, make sure she doesn't get into trouble. Keep her from going anywhere she shouldn't." "I will." And this young girl who looked about my age led me in through a side door of the castle, and it was nice inside. There was plush carpeting on the floor, and there were tapestries on the walls, and pictures that had been painted of different fairy tale creatures, and there were candles in, what are those things called? I asked, pointing to the holders that held the candles. "Oh, sconces. Come on, I want to show you my toy room, and then we'll go eat, and then it'll be bedtime." Her toy room was a mass of wonderful toys. There was a toy castle that was 3 feet tall and had all kinds of furniture in it and different molded characters that weren't human but were fairy tale. There was goblins and gnomes and centaurs and unicorns. And "What's this?" I asked, holding up a small character that was about 2 inches tall, maybe 3 inches tall, that looked like a human. "Oh, that's an elf like me. Elves look mainly human except for their pointed ears, see?" And she showed me hers. They weren't that pointed. "You're an elf?" I asked. "Yes, my mom and dad are the queen and king of this kingdom, and I'm the princess. But that doesn't matter. Look at my other toys." She showed me her dolls. And there was a rocking horse that looked like it was a unicorn. "This is from when I was younger. I'm too big for it now, but I told my mom and dad I wanted to keep it. It's got a secret hiding place." And she slid the saddle back, and inside was a mass of different trinkets and jewelry. "Here," she said, taking out a necklace. "This is for you." It was a gold chain with a gold and diamond unicorn on it. It was gorgeous, but that must have cost a lot. I don't think you should give it to me. It's not mine, it's yours. No, it's yours, I've given it to you. Besides, Mom and Dad won't care. I think I have another one just like it somewhere. Then she led me into her living room. This is my sitting room. I think you humans call it a living room. We'll eat here. There was a table that had several covered dishes on it, and the smells coming from them were amazing. And there were 2 plates set on the table. I sat in one chair and she sat in the other, and we began to serve ourselves. And then a little round lady came in. "Oh, there you are, Fiona. I just wanted to check on you and your friend. Make sure you eat everything that's on the table, and then we'll get you into bed." And she left. That's Flora. She's she takes care of me. "Your name is Fiona?" I asked. She nodded. "What's yours?" "Madison, but I go by Maddie." "I like Madison." As we ate, I asked her about her life in the fairy kingdom. "Oh, it's wonderful." "Do you have any friends?" I asked. "Not many. Most people don't want to play with the princess just in case something happens." "Oh, well, I'll play with you. But what about my family? Won't they wonder where I am in the morning?" She shook her head. "Time in the fairy kingdom goes a lot faster than in the regular world. You could stay here probably about 6 months, and then you'd get home and it would be morning." "Really?" She nodded. "Yes." We finished our food and then went into her bedroom. There was a huge bed that was very soft, and Flora came in and she helped Fiona change into her pajamas. I was able to change into different pajamas than the ones I'd been wearing, and then Flora tucked us in. After she left, I said, "How long can I stay?" "I don't know," said Fiona, "as long as I want you to stay. But you'll be home in time for your family to find you." "Oh," I said, "I'm excited. Thank you." I yawned and then fell asleep. Over the next couple of weeks, we were busy. We ran across fields filled with flowers and grass. We rode unicorns. The first time I met a unicorn, she sniffed my hand and then put her chin on my shoulder, and a voice said, "I like you. You're nice." And then she knelt so I could get on her back. We didn't use saddles. We just rode, and it was wonderful. I got to meet fawns, the ones that are half deer and then half man or woman, centaurs that are half horse and half man or woman, gnomes, fairies that are about 5 inches tall and have wings. They gave me a little basket made out of tree bark, and the gnomes gave me a little golden unicorn. And I got to meet all kinds of people, but fairy people. There were no humans here. There were animals, of course, regular animals, but no human people. Well, I guess it was about 2 weeks into my stay with my friend when we were playing on the large grassy area by the banks of this wonderful river that flowed quickly through the kingdom. And Fiona tossed me her ball, and I missed it, and it bounced and went into the water. "Oh no, my new ball!" Fiona ran to the edge of the river and reached in to grab her ball, but she slipped and fell into the river. "Help!" she cried as she bobbed to the surface. "Help!" I ran to the edge and reached out and grabbed her hand, but then the edge of the bank crumbled and I went in after her. I had been taking swimming lessons since I was 4, and so I knew how to swim. I put my arm under her. "Keep your head above water," I said, "and kick and move your arm." And she did exactly that. And I kicked and moved my arm, trying to get us to the side, but the river was flowing so quickly, and then strong arms were pulling us out. "What were you two doing, playing in the river?" "Fiona, you know you're not supposed to play in the river. It's too fast and it's too deep." She fell in," I told the guards that had pulled us out. She fell in, and I reached out to get her, and the bank crumbled. Oh, well, that's different. But we need to get you girls inside. And inside we went, and Flora took care of us. She stripped us of our wet clothes and put us in a hot bath, and then gave us chicken soup, and then gave us spoonfuls of medicine that tasted of green grass and fresh air and sunshine, and then tucked us into bed. The next day, neither one of us had a cough or a sneeze or anything. We were both well. "Thank you for saving my life," said Fiona. "I didn't save your life," I said. "I tried to, but I fell into the river." "I can't swim very well, but you held me up. You told me to keep my head above water. You saved my life." I thought, maybe I did. Well, we had more adventures, and we got to go to a nighttime dance of the fairy folk. And then Fiona said, "Tonight is a banquet, and you must go with me." After bathing in water smelling of rose petals, I was taken into her closet of dresses. So many dresses. I mean, hundreds. And Flora picked up one and said, "I think this one would look amazing on you." It was blue, and when she put it over my head, it fell around me in silken waves. Fiona wore a green one, and the two of us had socks put on our feet and little shoes and had our hair done, and then we walked to the banquet hall and sat at the table with her mother and father. Her father was a tall man, well, an elf with blue eyes and dark hair, and her mother was a tall female with blue eyes and dark hair. "I understand that you've been keeping my daughter company," said the king, "and playing with her, and I understand you saved her when she fell in the river." "Well, I didn't exactly save her. I reached in to grab her, and I fell in, and you kept her head above water and kept her from drowning until the guards could pull you out." "Well, yes." As we ate, the king asked me about my family. I told him that my father had gotten in trouble at work, that people had turned him in for taking money that wasn't his. "They said it was embezzling," I said. The king looked at me thoughtfully. "And they said that he'd have to pay all that money back. It was a lot of money. Mom and Dad said we might have to sell our house to pay it back." Said the king, stroking his beard. "Interesting." Well, too soon it was over, and Fiona and I went back to our room, and we were changed into our pajamas, and then as we were laying in bed, I said, "I have to go home tonight, don't I?" "Yes," said Fiona, "but it's been wonderful having you here. Thank you for coming." "Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me." In the morning, I awoke and found myself on the trail that I had wandered off of. I sat up and stretched. How had I gotten here? Had I fallen and hit my head, and then I remembered. And on the path next to me was a bundle wrapped in a wonderfully blue cloth. I picked up the bundle and walked back to the campsite. My mom and Dad were already awake, and they had worried looks on their faces. "Where have you been?" asked my mom. "Do you know how worried we are? How worried we've been?" "Well, I woke up and had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night," I said. And "What is this?" asked my mom, taking the bundle from me. She opened it, and it turned out to be a blanket made of different shades of blue that ran from one to the next, and it was made of just a wonderful cloth that was so soft and warm. Inside was the blue dress I'd worn the night before, and there was the necklace that Fiona had given me, the small unicorn that the gnomes had given me, and the little bark basket that the fairies had given me. "What is all this stuff?" asked my mom. Tucked amidst everything was an envelope that had my parents' name on it. Said my mother, opening it. Her and my father sat at the table and read the letter that was inside. By the time my brother and sister came out, well, everybody wanted to know what had happened, so I told them. My sister shook her head. "What a dreamer you are." "You really do have an imagination," said my brother. "You're such a doofus." My parents read the letter aloud. In it, it said that my father was not responsible for what had happened, and the man who had been responsible had been caught. My father would go back to work. My father was to check his bank account when we got home and not question what was in it. And we were not to question what would happen over the next 6 months. Lastly, it said that anything that had been in the bundle, other than the letter and the envelope, was mine. And anybody who messed with any of those things would have bad luck. Well, we went home that day. My dad checked his bank account, and there was a good amount of money in it. And his boss called him the next morning and told him that the person who had been responsible for taking the money had been caught, and that my father had been promoted to a new position and had a higher salary. And about 2 weeks later, a package arrived, and in it were tickets to Disneyland, plane tickets to get us there, and hotel information, plus some other things. Well, we went and we had a wonderful time. As for the items I'd been given, none of my family members messed with them, but when I was 12, a girl from my class took my necklace because she liked it so much. I called her that evening and said, "Could you please give back my unicorn necklace?" "I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't take your necklace." The next day, she was late to school. She had gone out to the garage to get her bike, and all the tires on her bike were flat, or both tires on her bike were flat. And when she tried to replace them, those tires went flat too. And then her mom tried to drive her and her siblings to school, and the car wouldn't start. "Here," she said, handing me the necklace. "Take your stupid necklace back." The next day, her bike tires were working fine. She never came over again. That was 60 years ago. I've told my grandchildren about my time in the fairy kingdom, and they all believe me, I think. My youngest daughter came to me one day when she was 6 and said, "Mama, there's a unicorn in the backyard, and it let me get on its back and took me for a ride." I believed her. My husband and I had bought a house that had a big yard, and about 20 feet from the back fence was a forest that covered probably a good 20 square miles. When I was with Fiona, I asked about people that believed in fairies, because I remembered my parents had read me, or my mom, had read me Peter Pan, and how if you didn't believe in fairies, they died. Fiona looked sad and said, "No, every time a child stops believing in the fairy kingdom, a gate between our world and your world closes. But every time an adult keeps believing in the fairy kingdom, a gate reopens." One day when my daughter came over with her 2-year-old and 4-year-old daughters, I asked her if she believed in the fairy kingdom. "Of course I do, Mom. Remember I rode a unicorn when I was a little girl? I think I've seen things." I smiled. At night, when it's too hot to not have the windows open and too cold not to have the air conditioning on, or to not have the air conditioning on, I leave my windows open. And there have been times when I've woken up in the dark of night and heard flute music and harp music playing. And I know that somewhere behind my house there is a fairy party going on. I've also heard a child laughing, and I know that Fiona is sometimes by me watching over me. That was 60 years ago that I went to her kingdom, and sometimes I still wish I can, but I haven't yet. But believe me, I know that there are at least 2 gates open right now, and there will still be at least 1 gate until my daughter passes on. But you never know. But believe me, the fairy kingdom is real. What time is it?
Still about 3 minutes.
Okay. So this next story, there's a story by Bruce Colville called Duffy's Jacket. And when I was thinking about it, I thought of this next story. There really aren't any similarities, but it helped me to think of this story. When I was a kid, my family lived at the base of a mountain in a small town or a large village. And through our town, the railroad came. We had trains that went through. Most were passenger trains. Some were freight trains, but most were passenger trains. Now, there was a track that went up the mountain, and that track was used from, mid-spring to Christmas Eve. The train would take people up the mountain, drop them off, and then make a circle around an area where people could hang out, and then it would stop and wait until people could board again and then take them back down the mountain. There was a building at the top of the mountain. In the spring and summer, the building sold treats and picnic items, plus some little toys for the kids. There were picnic tables, and there was grass, and people could run and play, and kids loved going up there. 1 week after Halloween, that place transformed into Santa's workshop. A couple from our town went up. The man dressed as Santa, the woman dressed as Mrs. Claus, and older kids, teenagers, were asked to come up and be elves to help. When people went up to this building, the children were each given either a donut, well, the adults as well were either given a donut or a chocolate chip cookie, and a glass of hot cider or hot chocolate. Each child was given a small package with something in it for them to remember what had happened. And there were things up there that had been donated by stores in the town, or people who were crafters that had donated things, and people could buy last-minute Christmas gifts. Most of the time, the trains had 3 or 4 cars behind them. But as it got closer to Christmas, the trains extended to 5 or 6 cars, all filled with parents and children, excited to see this wonderful Christmas spectacular. Well, my friends and I were all 12 or 13. I was 12, and there were 3 friends who were with me on Christmas Eve. We had been asked to go up and become elves and help hand out treats and gifts. And the last trainload of people had come, and this trainload had 6 cars on it behind the locomotive. We had handed out everything. It was the last train of the night, and we decided that we were going to walk. There was a nice path that had been cleared on the mountain down to the bridge. We decided we were going to walk back to town. We had just reached the bridge that crossed over a gorge that was so long that none of us had seen either end of it. And it was so deep that even standing on the bridge that people walked across, or sometimes rode their bikes across, you could not see the bottom of it on a bright summer day. We had just reached it when I looked over at the train tracks and stopped in horror. Somebody had cut 25 feet out of each side of the track, leaving an empty hole across the gorge. The gorge was probably, about 60 feet across. I could see the struts that held the track waving in the wind. "Oh no," I cried. "What are we going to do?" My friend, the one female who was with me, looked over and said, "Oh dear, who could have done such a thing?" The two boys looked over. "We have to do something." "I know, I'll run down and get my father," said Peter. "I can get him quickly, and he can come up here on a snowmobile and stop the train." "That might take too long," I said. The train could be coming any minute." "Well, you guys work on stopping the train." And he was gone. "What are we going to do?" said my friend. "I know," I said. "Let's unwrap this wrapping paper I bought and use the markers I got for my sister and write 'Stop, danger ahead,' and we can hold it across the tracks." "Are you sure that'll work?" "I don't know, but it might." So we did that, and we stood on the tracks, and soon enough, here came the train chugging along the tracks, and it stopped probably about 20 feet in front of us. And the conductor got off, and he was mad. "What kind of trick are you girls trying to play? What do you guys think you're up to?" "It's not a trick," I said. "Look at the tracks across the gorge." And he walked down, and he looked, and he froze. Who could have done that? Who? Well, somebody had done it. "You girls were very brave to do what you did," he said. "One of my friends went down to get his father. He'll be back, but I don't know how we're going to get all these people down." "Well, we'll work it out." We walked away from the train for a few minutes, and all of a sudden, out of the trees came a tall, dark figure. He had a bundle in his arms, and he laid the bundle down and started to walk towards us when suddenly the train began to move. The co-conductor was in the train, and he was making it move. "Oh no! The train's going to go over," I said. But this tall man went and stood in front of the train, and he spread his arms, and he caught that train, and he held it. And the co-conductor came off, just blithering, who are you? And this dark stranger went, picked up the co-conductor, took him onto the train car, into the locomotive, and then stepped out. He then walked over and picked up the bundle he had been holding. He walked out onto the broken train tracks. "Hey," I said, "don't do that. They'll break under your weight." He glanced our way and then proceeded to put pieces of track into place and to glue them? No. Attach them somehow. He attached the struts to them on both sides, this track and this track, and then came back off and walked over to us. "The track's good as new," he said in his deep voice. "The train can go across." Then he held out his hand to each of us. "Merry Christmas to all of you. Have an enjoyable day tomorrow." As he turned away, I said, "Thank you. You've been wonderful." He turned and smiled at me and then waved and walked back into the woods. About 10 minutes later, Peter came with his father riding a snowmobile. Peter was riding on the back behind his father, and the snowmobile came to a halt. "What kind of trick are you kids playing? That track isn't broken." "Well, it was," I said. It was, said the train conductor. "I saw it. Somebody cut 2 pieces of track out, one on each side. But this tall stranger came out of the woods and Peter's father scratched his head and said, "Oh my, the spirit has come again." And then he told us about where this tall, dark spirit may have come from. How when the tracks were first laid, which had been, about 50 years before, a group of men had gone up in the one locomotive to make sure everything was sound. There were 4 men, as the locomotive could hold 4 people, and they went up and they tried the tracks and everything was fine. Well, when they went to get back in, 3 of them said, "We're going to walk down. It's starting to rain." "I'll drive," said the last man, a tall man, a big man, not just tall but big, with dark hair. "Are you sure you want to take that down now?" "Oh, yes." And he started down the mountain in the locomotive. Well, the tracks were wet, and when he got over the gorge, the train car jumped the tracks and fell into the gorge. Nobody could rescue him because, they couldn't see the bottom of the gorge. But after that happened, strange things began to occur on the mountain. A lady got lost in a snowstorm. She had gone up to take a walk, and it began to snow, and she was in the woods and couldn't find her way out, so she curled up against a nice big tree and suddenly found herself picked up by a tall, dark stranger who carried her out of the woods and set her on the end of the bridge so she could walk across. "Next time, don't come when it's snowing. You'll be safe now," he said to her. And then there were a couple of boys who had decided to walk across the train tracks. And one was 12, the other one was 9. The 9-year-old didn't want to, but the 12-year-old brother called him all kinds of names until he did. They were about halfway across when they felt the tracks starting to shake. That meant there was a train coming up. They couldn't get off fast enough. They would have been hit and sent falling into the gorge, when suddenly a tall, dark man came out, picked each of them up in one arm and carried them off and set them on the end of the bridge. They were closer to the mountainside than they were to the downslope. "Don't ever walk across those tracks again," he said. "It's dangerous." After Peter's father told us these things, we all looked over at the woods. "Do you think it's the man who went over in the locomotive?" I asked. He nodded. "Yep, 'cause every time somebody gets saved, let's just say that ever since he went over into the gorge, these things have happened." We went home and had an enjoyable Christmas the next day. My little sister didn't care that there was writing on her wrapping paper or that we had used her markers. The day after Christmas, the conductor, Peter's father, and my 3 friends all gathered at our kitchen table and were told that it had been the co-conductor who had snuck down while everybody was having fun at Santa's workshop and had cut the 2 pieces out of the tracks because he was an evil man and he was in jail waiting trial. I stayed in that house until I was 18 and then left to go to college. And over the next 6 years, there were other sightings of this tall, dark stranger who helped others. Somebody whose bike tire exploded and who almost went off the edge, but who was caught by 2 strong arms and helped to the edge of the bridge. A couple who walked into the woods and lost their way, were led out by a tall, dark stranger. There are other stories I could tell you, but this I know. That man who was killed when he drove that locomotive down the mountainside and went into the gorge has returned over and over again to help others. And I know it because I saw him. When my friends and I stopped that train and kept it from going into the gorge, he came out and fixed that track. And I shook his hand, so I know he's real. All right, how much time do I have?
About 15 minutes.
Okay, this last one might be about 5 minutes longer, but. So this last story, when I was sitting in Julie Barneson's backyard at the last storytelling concert, I thought, what if I lived in a village where people didn't go into the woods at night because there was a beast? And so I came up with this story. I had been invited to one of the richer houses in town for an evening gathering of young people. I was old enough to start looking for somebody to marry. And although I wasn't part of one of the richest families in town, our family was well enough off. We had a big house and a big yard, and my father made enough in his occupation. And so I was invited with several others to enjoy ourselves in this back garden where we had tasty tidbits to eat, and there were musicians playing a flute and a harp and a couple other small instruments. And some couples had slipped away into more lonely corners of the garden to be alone and to get to know each other. Anyway, I was sitting at one of the tables when from over the wall came a growl. Rawr! "Oh no!" cried several of the females. "It's the beast! He's going to get us! He'll eat us! Where'd I put my gun? Where's that cane I brought?" And those were the men who said those things, and suddenly I felt a calmness descend upon me, and I stood and said very calmly, "The beast can't get into the garden. Remember that he's banned from gardens and roads. It's only the woods that he can be in." "Oh, she's right." "Yeah, she's right. Come on, let's go back to that corner where we were talking." When everybody had returned to their activities, I stood and walked to one of the corners of the garden. I lifted myself up on the wall and looked over it and saw two bright eyes looking back at me. "Come to my house in the morning, and I will explain everything," said a gruff voice. "All right," I said. I lowered myself back into the garden and found myself a nice, cozy bed of soft grass and leaves under a low-hanging tree and fell asleep. And it was common in those times for young people to not go home after such a party. Some people spent the night together, some people slept at the house where they had been invited to, and some people got together and did other things like playing games or singing or telling stories. So I knew my parents wouldn't worry about me. The next morning I got up and fixed my clothing and brushed some leaves from my hair, and then I let myself out of the garden and walked down a forest path into the forest, and eventually came to a large house surrounded by a wall with a gate in it. I remembered that when I had been younger, probably 10, my father had brought me here and shown me this house and said, "This is where a beast lives. He's a beast because somebody turned him into one. But I hear that he's a very nice young man as well." Approaching the front door, I knocked, and it was opened by a little round housekeeper. "Oh, we've been expecting you. Please come in. He's waiting to meet you. Well, I'm not really dressed for meetings, anybody. Oh, you're just fine. Come. And she led me into a small dining room. The table was spread with covered dishes, and I realized I was quite hungry. And there were 2 plates on the table, and before I could sit, a young man entered. And when I looked into his face, I saw that he was one of the most gorgeous young men I'd ever met. And he had kind eyes, and there was kindness in his face. Hello, my name is Liam. I'm Maureen. It's good to meet you, Maureen. Come, let us sit and eat, and over our food I will explain to you what's happened to me. As we ate, he explained that years before he had been approached by a young woman who dabbled in magic. He did not like her, but she wanted him as a husband. And when he rejected her, she told him that he would be a beast by night and a human by day until somebody could break the curse. Are you the one that takes people and kills them, I asked? He shook his head. No, that's not me. Even as the beast, I scare people, but I don't do anything to them. It's her. She turns them into small animals and, well, uses them in her potions or puts them in her stew pot. Now I knew where some of the people that had gone missing over the years had gone. What needs to happen for you to change back? You have to do several tasks, and you have to do it at night. Well, I'll do it, I said. Are you sure you want to? If you don't succeed, you'll end up in her cottage, in one of her cages, or in her stew pot. Yes, I said, I know. I can do it. We spent the morning walking amidst his gardens and talking. In the afternoon, I took a short nap and then was bathed and dressed for dinner. We ate, and then as darkness began to fall, his housekeeper helped me change into different clothes. Where your dress is very nice, said Liam, and your shoes are nice. They're not the kind of things you'll want for running around the forest at night. What about you, I asked. You won't come after me, will you? No. If anything, I'll try to keep you safe. I said goodbye to the housekeeper and to Liam. When he changed into a beast, his whole house went into a deep sleep. And I knew that they could not help me. Only he could help me if I really needed it. Then I walked out to the gate, and I looked at the pathway. The path to the left led back to the town. I could take it and go home and, well, I'd never see Liam again. Or I could go to the right and do the tasks that had been set for me. From across time and space, a song came to me. Come, little sister, run down the trail, follow the moonlight, silver and pale. Listen to the moon, 'cause she don't know what you need and where you have to go. And I looked to the right and saw a band of moonlight stretching off into the distance. And I turned and I ran along that path, coming to a halt at the edge of a pit. Rising from the bottom of the pit were bands of darkness. Dark, evil tendrils reached and tried to wrap around my ankles. How was I to get across, I wondered. Well, there was a tree, a big old tree. Maybe he could help me. And I went to the tree and I put my hands on him and I said, Mr. Tree, please help me get across this pit. I need to get across without the evil getting me. Oh, I'm so old, said the tree. I don't know if I can help you, but I need water. Please, get me water. Water, I thought. Where could I get water? And I looked around, and the moonlight showed me a well of clear water. I walked to the well and looked in. There was no way to carry the water. I mean, well, I had my shoes, but I couldn't use those. And I had a little bag they had given me. I couldn't use that, and the pants and the top and the jacket they had given me. It was a lightweight jacket, but it would work. I slipped out of the jacket and dipped it into the cool, clear water until it was soaking wet, and then walked to the tree and put the jacket around its roots. And somehow it stretched and it became wet turf, soaking turf that drained water to his roots. "Oh, that's just what I needed," said the tree. "Yes, I will help you." And he dropped one of his large branches down over the pit. It slanted across the pit, and I looked at it. I'd have to climb to get to the top. "Come, you must climb. She'll be on your trail soon enough." And I climbed up the tree and got to the top, and not the top of the tree, but to where the branch met the main trunk. And I carefully swung myself around and stood on that branch and wondered, should I run, should I crawl? Even as I thought it, dark tendrils reached up to try to grasp at my feet, my ankles. I began to walk, and suddenly I felt little twigs and leaves grasping at my feet to keep them steady. So I ran down that branch and leapt off onto the other side. And I turned as the tree raised his branch back up into the air, and I waved and said, "Thank you." "You're welcome. Keep going. She'll be on your trail soon enough." And I turned and was about to start running when off to my right, I saw a lady all of silver playing a harp. She raised a hand to me and waved, and then she disappeared. I ran along this trail, following the moonlight path, and then I reached a stream of clear, cool water. Oh, yes, I could wade across it. I was about to step in when I saw darkness moving at the bottom of the stream. Dark tendrils waved in the water. How was I supposed to cross? I looked to my left, I looked to my right, and suddenly saw off to my right a path of dark stones leading across the water. And on my left, a path of silver stones leading across the water. And, oh, I looked again to my right. The dark stones drew me in with riches. I would be so rich that people would come to me for money. But then I jerked myself. No, I thought, I don't need money. I don't want money. I want Liam. I want to marry Liam. I could see that the water was just a couple inches above that path of dark stones. When I looked at the other side, the silver stones, I could see that their tops were above the water. I stepped onto the silver stones and crossed. The shoes that they had put on me before I left Liam's house were truly wonderful ones. Their soles grasped stone and rock and bark and dirt and grass and kept me from falling. And then I was on the other side and I leapt off and I began to run again. And then I was at the edge of a meadow, a long, full meadow, and the moonlight showed down brightly. There was only one path where I was, but on the other side, there were 3 paths. Which one should I take? And then the music came to me again. Come, little sister, run from the owl. She is bound to make things foul. One touch of her claw and you're done. Come, little sister, follow the moon and run. And as I ran to a rabbit that I saw sitting in the middle of the field, I heard the owl call from the way I'd come. Whoo! Who dares to disturb my hunting? Who dares to disturb my forest? Who will I catch? I dropped down next to the rabbit. You must help me, I said. I need to know which path to take. He looked at me, his nose twitching in the wind. Take whichever path you want, he said. I don't care. Go back the way you came. No, I said, I can't. The owl is coming. There is a lady, a witch following me. She wants me. He looked at me with his big dark eyes. It's hard for me to know a specific lady. I don't know who you mean. Listen, I said, picking him up. I wanted to shake him, like a parent shakes a child, but I didn't. She wants you. She wants you on her table as her supper. She wants me. She wants me either as a small animal she can put in her potions or as an animal she can put in her stew pot. If she kills you, you will not be able to protect your family. You will be gone. And then she'll come after your mate and your children. Well, he seemed to think about it. Okay, you need to take the right path. The right path? No, wait. You need to take the middle path. The middle path? Yes. All right, come on. And I got to my feet. And as I hit the end of the middle path, I heard the sound of the owl's wings as she came into the air over the field. Who am I going to catch? Who will be my next victim? I ran for all I was worth and suddenly dropped into a crouch and let the rabbit go into a small opening in brush on the left. Go in there, I said. If you go in there, you'll be safe. I know where I am, and I can find my way home safely. You run. You be safe. Stay away from the owl. And then I was up and running again, but I could hear the sound of the owl's wings as they beat the air, and I knew she was right behind me. And suddenly, I dropped and rolled. I was under low-hanging branches of a tree in a den-type area, and I knew the owl was outside waiting for me to come out. I could stay in this den for the rest of the night and come out and go home, or I could do something to get rid of the owl, and then I could save Liam. I felt around on the ground. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I found 2 items, small items. One felt like a bow and arrow, and the other one felt like a wolf or a dog. But these wouldn't help me. I put the 2 items into my small purse and felt around again and found a branch almost as big around as my forearm and about 3 feet long, and I knew what I had to do. I surged out of the hiding place to my feet. I heard the rasp of the owl's claws as she came off of the tree across the path from me. And I turned and I swung that branch. I heard her whoo as I hit her and sent her flying into the brush and the trees on the opposite side of the trail. And then I dropped the branch and I ran. I followed that moonlight path, and suddenly on my right, a door opened into a gleaming room. I turned and entered, and suddenly the same silver lady was standing in front of me. You may take 3 items, she said. Only 3, so think carefully. Wait, I said, what about these? And I pulled the 2 things I'd found under the tree out. I think they belong to you. She smiled. All right, 5 items, she said. 5 items are yours, but be careful when choosing, because these items will help you. And remember, you don't have much time, And then she was gone, and I looked around at dozens of tiny carved creations. Were they carved out of stone or rock or moonlight or bone? I wasn't sure. They all glimmered with a silver glow. I walked over to one shelf and looked. There were tiny instruments, a tiny piano, a tiny violin with a bow. No, I thought, these won't help me. Maybe I moved over one shelf and there was a tiny wine bottle. Written on it in tiny letters was the word blood. Blood, I thought, well, and something told me to take that. I took that one, and then I found a tiny, what was this, a bone? It looked like a bone that had meat on it, and it was wonderful, but it wasn't ugly. It was beautiful, like everything else, and I put that in my bag. And then I found a little fly so intricately carved that the wings were as thin as paper, but they were made out of whatever these things were. I put that in my bag. And then I found, I didn't know if it was a mouse or a rat, but it was also beautiful. Its long tail curved almost around by its side. I put that in my bag, and then I looked again. I saw a candle. And there was a lantern, and there was a lightning bolt, and I looked at the three items and I thought, darkness. Even if you light a candle, there are still shadows in the corners. And the same thing with a lamp, but a lightning bolt. When it's pouring rain and it's thundering and lightning, and the lightning flashes, you can see everything. So I took the lightning bolt and put that in my bag. I had my 5 items. I turned and I left that room. And when I looked back, it was gone. I then turned to my right and I kept running, and suddenly I was in a room with 7 doors. 7 doors, all the same color. Choose your door carefully, because whatever's inside will get you. The voice hissed around me like a snake, swirling like a python ready to squeeze. You will never catch me, I said. Oh, don't be so sure, because when I get you, your fate will be worse than his. And then the voice stopped. I looked at the 7 doors. All right, I thought, I'll take the one on the left. I opened the one on the left, and a dog creature leapt out at me. Fresh meat! Wait, I said, wait, here. And I tossed the bone to him, only it wasn't the little bone I'd taken. It was a large, juicy, meaty bone. He caught it. Thanks. And then that door, and he were gone. All right, I thought, what about the one on the right? And I went down to the one on the right and opened it, and a large cat leapt out. Ooh, fresh meat! I took out the rat creature. No, I said, here, and threw that to her. And she took it. It was now a giant rat, about 3 feet long. Thank you. And then she was gone, and that door was gone. Okay, there were 5 doors left. Which one should I choose? Okay, the one in the middle. And out came a large spider, 4 feet tall, with huge fangs. Oh, no. A fresh meat, she hissed. No, wait, I said, please, I have some. What would you have for me? And I tossed the fly to her, only when she caught it, it wasn't a little trinket. It was a large fly. Oh, thank you. And then she was gone. I took a deep breath. There were 4 doors, 2 on the left and 2 on the right. Okay, I thought, I'm going to the one on the left, on the very left, and I opened it, and a man dressed in black with a white face stepped out. Oh, she sent me some fresh blood. Come to me, my sweetheart. Wait, I said. Here, and I handed him the wine bottle. Only now it was 3 feet tall, and it wasn't full of wine, it was full of blood. Thank you, this is so much better. And then he was gone. I went to the door on the right and opened it, and darkness came out. A great wall of seething darkness. I remembered my last trinket. It was a lightning bolt. I pulled it out and I threw it into the darkness. And with one giant burst of energy, the bolt lit up the darkness, and the darkness receded, as did the door. It was no longer there. So now there were 2 doors. I looked at each of them. The one on the left was silver. The one on the right was gold. The gold thrummed. And I looked at it and thought, gold. And it said, you will be rich. You will have many houses. People will come to you for advice. Come to me. And I took several steps toward it. And suddenly, when I was only a couple steps from it, I jerked myself and said, no, I don't want to be rich. I don't want to be looked at by everybody. And then I turned and looked at the silver door. I want Liam. I want true happiness. And I began to walk towards the silver door, but with every step, invisible cords tightened around me until my feet were bound together, and my hands were bound by my sides, and I couldn't move. I only had 1 step left to go. How was I going to do it? And I pushed myself up on my toes and leaned forward and fell. And the door opened, and I was falling through darkness and moonlight, and harp music and flute music played as I fell. And then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I found myself lying in a bed, and the housekeeper was next to me on a chair. When she saw I was awake, she clapped her hands and said, oh, yes, you're awake. Oh, we're so glad. How did I get here? I said. Well, I heard the sound at the door, and when I opened it, you came falling in and you were unconscious. Was it daytime or nighttime? Oh, it was still night, just before dawn. But how could you have been? And suddenly I knew. I had broken the curse. So, of course, his staff had awakened. And how is Liam? Oh, he's just fine, and he's waiting to see you. After bathing and getting dressed, I was led into the same room where we had breakfast. Was it just the day before? Not just breakfast, but lunch and dinner. Just the day before. And we sat, and he asked me about what had happened. And I told him that there had been several challenges that I had had to get through. But I couldn't really remember what they were. And he said, that's no matter. At least you're here now. And I smiled at him, and he smiled at me. After eating, we went to my parents' house, and I introduced Liam to them. And they were absolutely enthralled to meet him. When he told them that he had been the beast and I had broken the curse, my parents hugged me and told me they were so proud of me. We were married a year later, and our house is a house of happiness. Our servants are not our servants. Well, they are, but we treat them as friends. Their children play with our children, and we have a happy home. We allow anybody who needs rest to enter our home. Several days after the nighttime adventure I walked to where the witch's cottage had once stood. No longer was there a cottage there with evil tendrils snaking out from under the roof. There was just a pile of rubble and empty cages, broken, lying on the ground. And outside of what had once been the front door was a rose bush that stood 5 feet tall, with the biggest, roundest roses on it that were such a red that nobody had ever seen them before. But those roses are not part of this story. They're part of another story. And someday, I will tell you that story. Thank you all. I appreciate this. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Another round of applause to Kira Larkin. Woo! All right. And I'm actually going to press a magic button here for those who are on the stream. We want to make sure that you know about our next house concert. So here it is showing up on your screen right now. It's going to be on August 19th, 2024, and it will be in Providence, Utah. So that's more towards Logan, a lot farther. We are grateful to the Erickson family to host that. It will be outdoors, but there is shade, so that'll be wonderful. It is great for all ages, and so that way you have kids, adults, it's going to be great. And we're going to stream it as well. So again, storycrossroads.org/house concerts. You can already see those details there. And also, when it comes to those who are in person, we get to enjoy some wonderful strawberries and grapes and brownies and such. So if you are at home or you're watching this later, make sure you treat yourself. Get to go find something yummy. I'm sure there's some ice cream in the freezer or something. So we are grateful to all of you. Until we tell again.